Okay, it is, what day is it? It is Wednesday, and over here is a very interesting man who has just lost his two front teeth.
Okay, let me think here. Well, right before dinner, I was yanking on my tooth and I pulled it out.
I fell in love with this kid from the moment I set eyes on him. We knew from the very early years of his life that he was going to be different. He was going to be out of the box. He loved beauty and drama and art.
Today you will be hearing a few very famous lines from Romeo and Juliet.
Sometimes I would come home and find him doing the most amazing things for a 5-year-old. He would be on the floor and doing an art project, creating a portrait of the Virgin Mary in the Cubist style like Picasso. And it was about that time, too, that he began to ask me some really profound questions about life and its meaning and about God. He used to call me at my office and say something my rocket scientist father used to say to me when I was a little boy. Hey, Dad, you want to have an intellectual conversation?
Growing up, my dad was my hero. I wanted to be just like him. I would sit in church every Sunday completely mesmerized by this giant in the pulpit who could expound on these ideas about God and humanity with so much depth and skill and humor. He spent hours reading to me and answering my questions about life and art and history. And that was so different than how I felt out in the real world. You know, I was always isolated, I was always bullied. But with my dad, you know, I always knew that I was accepted just the way I was.
Come to me, Andrew. Then take me.
So one time we thought, well, we'll try something different. So when he was about 6, we put him on a t-ball team, and I'll never forget the first time he held that bat in his hand and looked at the baseball, staring at it like, what am I supposed to do with this? I would take him to Cardinals games, and he thought those were okay, but honestly, he liked it a whole lot more when we took him to the symphony or to the opera. Those were wonderful things, and they were the kind of things that made Drew really cool to me and Robin, but honestly, those were also the things that often made him unintelligible and an outcast to his male peers.
And I guess it was about 11 or 12 when I called my therapist and I had in front of me 3 books. I had Leviticus, I had The Collected Works of Sigmund Freud, and I had Bringing Up Boys by Dr. James Dobson, A Focus on the Family. And I said, I think I'm experiencing some regressive issues that are manifesting an unwanted same-sex attraction. How do we nip this in the bud? You know, because I was a zealous Christian boy. I wanted to please God with my life, and I knew that these feelings were wrong. I knew these feelings would send me to hell. So I spent the next 5 years in and out of ex-gay conversion therapy, doing everything they told me to do in order to get rid of these feelings. And if you spend enough of your teenage years suppressing who you are and how you feel, the anger and the resentment over that, eventually it explodes.
We found ourselves caught between our religious and moral convictions and our love for our son and our understanding of his pain.
So when I was 18, I ran as far and as fast as I could away from my family and how I was raised. And I went to New York City for 5 years. And I had a life that was, on the outside, very successful and very glamorous. But internally, the rift between me and my parents was a huge source of pain and also anger, a lot of anger. I was really angry for a long, long time.
I think we did some things right, but I think we made some mistakes as well. And over the last few years, I've really needed to come to the point of asking Drew to forgive me for some of the mistakes I made that caused him pain.
And I had so many friends in New York City who just didn't understand why do you still keep a connection to your parents? You don't need them, screw them. But I knew who my dad was. Neither of us could ever really give up, even when times were really, really, really hard.
We've just come to understand that love and time and forgiveness brings healing.
My dad and I were able to preserve our relationship, actually to even strengthen it and deepen it in the midst of our totally conflicting worldviews. But that's not common. In most cases, in a conservative religious family, be it evangelical, Mormon, Jehovah's Witness, Muslim, Catholic, it doesn't matter. If a kid comes out as gay, the relationship between the parent and the kid is over. 1.5 million kids go homeless in America every single year. 40% of those kids are LGBT. And the overwhelming reason that they're on the streets is because their families said, get out.
When Drew came out, that's when I figured I needed to come out too, as an evangelical theologian with a gay son who had left the faith. And in the years since that, one of the things that's often happened with me is that I found myself sitting in my office with students from the Christian university where I teach, and I would have a young man or a young woman sitting across with me who really loved Jesus, and yet they had their own gay or transgender story to tell me. I finally talked to Drew and I said, buddy, we have got to tell our story.
I was in Cairo and I was putting on this play. And in the play, the main character, she writes this story about her life, this really difficult part where she was raped. And she writes it into a book that gets published. Even though she knows it's going to be really hard, she does it because she believes that sharing her story could give a voice to other people who've had the same experience and can't talk about it. That sharing her story could make a difference. And so while I was putting on this play, I got this email from Dad, and I'm sitting there in Egypt reading his email. I thought, it's time.
Writing this book has been the hardest thing I've ever done.
It's been hilarious, and it's been fun, and it's been really difficult and painful.
We're both so glad to be done writing.
I can't wait to see what this thing is going to start.